Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the important documents that you need to gather as soon as possible to prepare for your visa and work permit application. Now, the school is going to help you with all of this, but they can't do it without you having your documents ready. And I don't know when you're viewing this. It could be very early in the spring, in January or February, in which case we've got a bit of a time. But if you're a teacher hired quite late in the recruitment season, the process to get a work permit and a visa is quite lengthy, and it's really essential that you get these documents in order. So let's get started. First of all, of course, you need your passport. So run to the cupboard, grab your passport, and make sure that it is valid for at least 6 months beyond the duration of your contract. So if you've signed a 1-year contract, you need 18 months on your passport. If you've signed a 2-year contract, obviously you need 2.5 years. Make sure your passport is not damaged if it's gone through the washing machine or something like that. And also make sure that you have several empty pages for visas. Your Chinese visa is going to take a full page of your passport, and every time you enter and leave the country, you're also going to get stamps on another page. And you may very well be going to a country on one of your well-earned vacations that requires a visa and is going to need some kind of pages. So if you don't meet those requirements, this is the first thing you need to do. Download the visa application form, the passport application form, get a new passport right away. Okay, we're also going to need your university degrees and transcripts, and I'm going to talk about the resume requirements later, but your transcripts must align with the information in your resume, obviously. We hope your resume was factual, but make sure it is, double check. Scanned copies of your transcripts are fine. Most universities, certainly in Canada and the US now, you can just, if you don't have your transcript, you can just go on their website, log in, search for order a transcript, click, pay $5 or $10 with your credit card, and you should have your transcripts within a week or so. Now, if you've gone to university in another country, we do recognize that this can take a little bit longer, so make sure you get on it. Now, your highest university degree. This is a requirement now to get your visa. You only need a bachelor's degree to be eligible to be a teacher in China and get a work permit. So if you have almost completed your master's degree but not quite, for example, leave that off your resume that you're going to submit. We've already seen it. For hiring purposes, we've already seen that. But you're just going to put on your resume the highest degree that you have in your possession. And we need the original copy or an official copy. If you've lost your original copy, or if your mother has it framed somewhere and you don't have it, you can order an official copy from the university. It doesn't take that long to get it. It might cost you a few dollars. But we need that, and then there's going to be a process to have that notarized and then authenticated by the Chinese embassy or consulate near you. And I will talk about that process of notarizing and authentication in another video. But for now, make sure you get an original or official copy of your degree, the actual parchment degree, and your transcripts. Criminal record check. We need your criminal record check issued by a local police station, and it's going to be notarized and authenticated by the Chinese consulate or embassy as well. Make sure that you check the vulnerable sector, which includes fingerprinting, at least if we're in Canada, because you're going to be working with children, of course, and youth, so that vulnerable sector is important. And you're also going to need to bring the original hard copy of your criminal record check with you to China and give it to the employer. But at this stage in the game, you're just preparing the document and you're going to scan it and send it off to the school. A medical check. Now, this is interesting. So China has produced a bilingual 2-page form, which I'll have available for you, which you need to take to a doctor. It can be any doctor. If you can't get in to see your family doctor, or if you don't have a family doctor, you can go to a walk-in clinic. It doesn't matter who. And one problem that's come up in the past is that people look at this form and it seems quite detailed and they get a bit spooked by it. You really should view this just as a formality. You just need to get this done in order to get your work permit. It's part of the bureaucracy in China. And in fact, you're going to have to go and get another medical check once you arrive in China in order to get your residence permit and that kind of thing. So what you need to tell your doctor is, A, you don't have to get x-rays done. You can leave the x-ray section blank. And there's a section on the form for blood work. And teachers in the past have told me, well, my doctor said it'll be weeks before we can get the blood work results back. Please tell your doctor this is just a formality, and if they can just write in no sign of illness or something like that, we're good to go. Okay? Now, again, it might sound a little bit dodgy from a Canadian perspective. We're not asking a doctor to fudge the results. We're just saying we don't need every single detail on the form, but we do need the form, and we don't want it to be delayed. So you should be able to walk in and see a doctor and get this done in one day. Your resume. So you've probably been programmed to create beautiful resumes with a lot of details because you're trying to impress somebody in the HR department to get hired. Well, you're already hired. So now what we have to do is we have to scale it back, make it bare bones so that it meets the minimal requirements of the Chinese Foreign Affairs Bureau in whichever city you're going to. So basically, we just want, of course, your name, your address, your contact information, your education, and your work experience. Now, we need dates for those things, and they'll even ask, like, your education. When did you graduate from high school? What dates were you there? The month and the year. Sounds a bit silly. Maybe you have a master's degree, but they still want to know when you finished high school. So please include the dates, and then sign your resume. Take out all information that's unnecessary. We don't care that you worked at Safeway stocking boxes in the back. That's not relevant. So only education-related work experience. And it's important to note you must have 2 years of related work experience. So here's an interesting situation. If you are a teacher who has just completed your teacher education program, in the previous semester, well, obviously you don't have 2 years of certified teaching experience. However, as long as you completed your undergraduate degree before you did your teaching program 2 years earlier, then you likely had some relevant work experience in there. Perhaps your practicum experience could be put in under the experience section, and any work that you did as a tutor, as a counselor, anything related to teaching and learning, coaching jobs, anything like that can be put in there. The key thing is there has to be 2 years of experience after the completion of your first degree. Okay. The next document that we need is a new requirement, and it's called the Work Experience Certificate. Basically, it documents that your last job, you did indeed work, what the position was. It needs to include your years of service, the description of your role, and the administrator's contact information and signature. Now, luckily, in lieu of this document, because this kind of document doesn't really exist necessarily, a reference letter is acceptable from your last employer as long as it includes that information. So you could just ask, if you don't already have it, ask your previous employer to produce that letter for you with that information. The documents that I've discussed so far are documents that can take a bit of time to put together, so that's why I've highlighted them first. Get on those things, because in some cases it could take a while. A reference letter, for example. Maybe your previous supervisor is on vacation You can't even track them down for a while, so get on those right away. The next few things are easier to put together. So you're going to need, obviously, passport-type photos. It's just the standard headshot on white paper. It's got to be taken within the last 6 months, and a digital copy is fine that you can just email to your school contact. But they should be professionally done. It's not a selfie, so make sure you go down to the Photoshop and you tell them it is for a Chinese visa, sort of a standard 2-inch size. I would also recommend that even though I've just said you only need to send 1 copy, I would recommend that you get a number of copies, like 6 or 8 printed copies, because you never know. You may decide on your holiday that you want to go to another country that's going to require a visa and a passport photo, and rather than have the hassle and the stress of finding the photographer who can do that for you in China, why not just bring them and have them with you? I always found that's an investment worth doing. We're going to also need a scanned copy of your employment contract that you have signed and that will be countersigned, and of course we will have that. I will have that copy. Now here's one tricky thing, and again, we have to be prepared for things that are different, but this is one thing that spooks some Canadian teachers and other foreign teachers. In some cities, they have asked the teacher to also sign a Chinese version of their contract, which has an English translation. And when the teacher looks at that contract, they say, but these aren't the same conditions. They aren't the same terms. In fact, it's not even the same salary, and the salary is lower. Now, it's been explained to me that in some places, the local Foreign Affairs Bureau has said, we can't approve a salary of that amount or whatever it is. So the local school has prepared a contract that will meet the requirements that they know. Through their connections, they've learned this is what we need. So I just want to reassure you that the English language contract is the legal and binding document that will be honored, and that's how you would be paid, and all of the benefits that are included in your English language countersigned contract. That's the legitimate one. But you could, in some locations, be asked to sign this second contract. So don't freak out about it. It's just part of the part of the bureaucracy and the process we have to go through to ensure that you get your visa and your work permit. This last document, I don't believe is actually required for your work permit and visa, but it certainly will be required for your annual school inspection. Your school will be inspected by the Ministry of Education from back in Canada every year, usually in the fall, so it's something that also needs to be prepared and sent. And I'll talk to you in another video about what to do if your teaching certificate is in progress. And that's another issue. And then finally, if you are bringing a spouse or children, a non-teaching spouse, I should say, then of course they're also going to need the passport, the medical check, passport photo, and a marriage certificate and a birth certificate that are also being notarized and authenticated by the Chinese embassy. I'll talk about that process later. Now, this is an interesting situation because, of course, many Western couples are in a common law union rather than a legal marriage. But unfortunately, China does not recognize common law unions. So we would, in that case, have to look at some alternatives. So if you're able to produce a marriage certificate, then your non-teaching spouse will be eligible for a residence permit, the same duration that yours would be as the teacher. If they can't get that, of course, there's still alternatives. We could get a tourist visa for them, which would allow them to come and be in the country, but only for about 60 days at a time. So they would need to leave the country and come back in order to live with you. Now, we have a big holiday in the middle of the year at Chinese New Year, but it would probably require at least 2 other trips to Hong Kong or somewhere else, and that would be at your expense in that case. So just to be aware of that. If your spouse, of course, is a teacher, then they're going to go through the same process you go through, and they will have their work permit as well. We don't need to worry about that. And that's basically it. Those are the key documents that you need. And we need you to get on them right away. So gather them all up and prepare to send them off to the school. And there will be another presentation coming up talking about some of the processes that I've mentioned. And we'll also have the medical form attached. You should be able to find that somewhere here in the course. Thanks, and see you in the next video.